All right, I have my coffee, guys. Let me get you all set up. Get us in focus. Actually, my camera was out of focus this morning and I don't know enough about the camera and I was like, what do I do? And I was just like playing around. I was like, oh, I guess you have to put autofocus on. So that's what I did. But anyways, welcome to my channel, guys. Welcome to Enneagram and Coaching. I'm Hillary, your certified Enneagram coach, and I'm excited for today because today is the last video in this video series that I think I started at the beginning of this summer. And that's the funny thing with the Enneagram, you know, there's 9 types, and so usually it has to be a 9-video series. So this is the last one. I'm really excited to get to the type 8 today. That's the video we're doing, type 8, the Challenger. We are going to be going over the mistypes of the type 8. And what that means is I'm going to take the type 8 and kind of like a versus each number. So, okay, what the type 8 and the type 1, what do they have in common? Not in common, stuff like that. Is it a common mistype? Not common mistype? So I'm going to take the type 8 and go through all 9 types. Well, I guess 8 types since I'm doing the 8. So, but anyways, that's what this video is about. We're going to go over the mistypes of the type 8, the Challenger today. And you guys know my passion, my goal is to help you guys gain freedom, flourish, grow, and really settle into who you are supposed to be, who you are, embrace that, not try to be someone else, but be who you were meant to be. So that's why we do this. But before we even dive in, don't forget to push that subscribe button. It's super important. You guys have helped me reach I think almost 3,300 subscribers. So I am so thankful to you guys. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps my channel. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the love you give me, all the comments and everything. And actually, that leads me into the last video. I told you guys that I struggle to have a real favorite coffee drink from Starbucks. And the only reason I'm picking Starbucks is because I feel like that's probably what we all have in common. I do like a local coffee shop. But I just thought, oh, I'll go with Starbucks because everybody has their favorite drink at Starbucks, but I don't. And I have before and they've taken them away. I feel like every time I find a drink I'm in love with, it gets discontinued. The last one I loved was the Caramel Frappuccino Light, no whip, almond milk. That was my favorite, but they don't do the light anymore. And so now to me it tastes a little too sweet. So, but you guys have been giving me so many coffee ideas from Starbucks. I'm excited to try them. Let me see. I know you guys can't see the screen, but somebody had said, where was it? There it is. Okay, I think it was on my last video. Oh, her name's Sarah Maverick, I think. And she was like, girl, I got you. And she gave me a bunch of her favorite drinks. And the one that stood out to me was the Venti cold brew with coconut milk, 5 pumps of toffee nut. And I have to say, I've never put toffee nut in any of my drinks before. So I'm like, hey, I totally want to try that. But here's what I'm saying is if you have a favorite drink, leave it in the comments below because I am going to start trying your guys' drinks and I will take you along with me for each video. It'll be a little behind the scenes and let's try and find me a favorite drink, guys. I would just love to have a favorite drink. So anyways, thanks guys. But let's actually get started and dive into what this video actually is about today. And it is about, like I said, the Enneagram Type 8, the Challenger's mistypes. And before we dive into the 8 versus all the types, I want to say the most common question I get is, you know, I feel like this type and I feel like this type. And what that leads me to think is, why do people mistype? Why is this a thing? And it's totally a thing, guys. Even myself, I struggled. I knew I was a 9, but my struggle was I did feel like a lot of other types. And there's a reason for this. And as a certified Enneagram coach, I know the reason, but I love teaching you guys it. And I'm just gonna use, I'll use the 8 for an example because that's the video we're on. You might go, well, I actually feel like a 2 sometimes, and a 5 sometimes, and a 7 sometimes, and a 9 sometimes. Well, there's a reason for that. The 8's wings are the 9 and the 7. Those are their wings, and so they use both of those. And then also the 8 goes towards the 5 in stress, and the 8 goes towards the 2 in health. And so you're gonna see a little bit of that come up, but I'm gonna get more into that later. But that's just a real quick reason why you might mistype is because you have a little bit of already 5 types. So, and then the subtypes play a part in it. I'm gonna be doing a series on that coming up. So if you wanna know a little bit more about subtypes, you know, those are coming. Don't worry. I am gonna do a series on the subtypes of each type. I'm trying to get comfy, guys. I'm 6 feet tall. I don't know if you know that. And so sitting here sometimes could be, I kind of twitch a lot and move a lot. I do notice that in these videos, but it's okay. You guys don't care. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the type 8 versus the type 1. Let's just start at the beginning and go through the type 8 versus the type 1. Okay, so this one is the challenger versus the perfectionist, and this actually can be a common mistype. It definitely does happen. One of the reasons is because they both are in that gut triad. They both struggle with anger, but it looks different in both of them. The 8, they have the most ready access to their anger. They're very quick to express it. To them, anger is just an emotion. It's not a bad one. It's not a good one. It's just an emotion. They are quick. They will respond with anger, no problem. But I will say, an 8 would say they don't actually like conflict. So I think there's a stereotype of them or a misconception that they love conflict, but I would say they don't like it, but they don't have a problem doing it. And that is the difference between them and other types. They don't mind conflict. They'll do it if, you know, they need to, but they don't like it. And they also don't like getting mad. I think that's another misconception about the 8. Like, they like being mad. No, they don't like being mad, but they are the ones that can appear mad even if they're not. And I have a type 8 for a husband, and I will say, we've been married almost 21 years, and there are so many times where I would have said, "You are so angry." And we have teenage boys. And so it's usually dealing with our kids. And it's like, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're coming across so angry." And he's like, "I'm not angry at all." And I'm like, "No way. Really? You seem angry." But he would say he's not actually mad. And so I have learned to actually believe him, because obviously he knows himself and he knows how he's feeling. And so that could be a misconception about them. But the difference between that 8 and that 1 is, while I said the 8 can overexpress it, even if they don't actually think they're expressing it, the 1 will underexpress it. They repress it. It actually 100% comes out, but it comes out as frustration, criticalness, you know, they're critiquing and they're critical, and that's how their anger is kind of like seeping out, because a 1 actually thinks to show anger would be bad, and it might make them look like a bad person. And so for them, they're repressing it, and the 8 is expressing it because they're both in that gut triad. So they both deal with anger, but they deal with it differently. I have heard that a type 1 might not even realize how their anger comes across. They aren't realizing that people are like, "Oh yeah, they can tell you're angry." It's really apparent to those around a type 1 when the 1 is angry, but a 1, because they're repressing it, doesn't know that others actually will know that they are angry. I would say some similarities. They are both about justice, and that's where I think the biggest mistype happens, because they both want justice. They both are very vocal about their beliefs. Both are willing to sacrifice a great deal to do what needs to be done. And so those are some similarities between the two. And I would say, if you're looking for differences between the 8 and the 1, look at like how much self-control you have. I would say the type 8s, they don't have as much self-control as a type 1 does. And then also look at what you do under stress. Where do you go? Because the 8 goes to the 5 under stress, and the 1 goes to the 4 under stress. A type 1 goes to the unhealthy to average side of the 4, which means they are more moody, irrational, some of that kind of stuff you're gonna see. And then the type 8 moves to the average to unhealthy side of the 5, which means they will become more secretive and fearful. And so those two things are very different. So if you're trying to decide between the two, ask yourself, what kind of behaviors are you seeing when you're under stress? And that might help you. Okay, so let's move on to the type 8 versus the type 2, which is, again, the challenger versus the helper. This one can be a common mistype. And I will say it's because of the subtypes, because the type 8 the social subtype can actually look like a 2 sometimes. And why? Because they're both focused on helping others. But what I would say to look at if you're trying to decide between these two is look at the core fears. Those are very different in the type 2 and the type 8. The type 8, some of their core fears is being controlled, betrayed, and vulnerable. Those are some of those core fears in the type 8. And the type 2's core fears are being unloved, unimportant, unwanted. And so those are some big differences between the 2 and the 8. And you might say, well, all of those are my fear. Fine. What are your core fears though? A few of those will bubble to the top, and you'll know, like, wait, am I more afraid of being betrayed, or am I more afraid of being unloved? And that should help you. And I would say a type 2 can think they're a type 8 because they do move towards the 8 in stress. And so they will become more challenging. They will take on some of the average to unhealthy traits of the 8 and be more like assertive and aggressive, and which can be a good thing for the 2, but under stress, I would just say, look at that red flag of why you're under stress. And again, if you're trying to decide between the 2, go to those core core desire, core fear, core longing, core weakness. The last thing I would say on this one is look at their motivations if you're trying to decide between the two. 8s, they're motivated by feeling understood and respected and having freedom. Another motivation would be for that 8 is come up with logical and practical ideas and solutions. Are you coming to say hi? I feel like he has to make an appearance in my videos every time. Come here, lay down, come say hi. He's always having to make an appearance in these videos now. Uh-oh, let's redo this. Okay, and the last one for the 8 is making decisions that help other people. So those are some motivations for the 8. And some motivations for the 2 would be they like serving others that are in need. They like being helpful and getting things accomplished. They like meeting new people and making new friends. All of those things are motivators for the type 2. So little difference between the type 8 and the type 2. Okay, so let's move on to the type 8 versus the type 3, the achiever. Okay, so the type 8 and the type 3, definitely a common mistype. They're both in that assertive stance or aggressive stance, and we'll go into that a little more. Both can be confident, both like to accomplish things and get things done. Both want to be respected. The difference there is 3s think they have to earn your respect, and 8s, they just expect it. And so that is a difference on that one. 3s are usually more driven and charming, and 8s tend to be more self-sufficient and outspoken. I would say both 8s and 3s, they both enjoy new challenges. They both are pretty adaptable, especially when they have a new challenge. I would say that 3 is probably more adaptable than the 8, but they both, if there's a new challenge involved, they both can adapt to that. If you're trying to decide between these two, the thing I would look at is the arrows, because the 3 goes to the 9 under stress and the 8 goes to the 5 under stress. And what those look like are the 3 going to the 9, they suddenly shut down, become disengaged, apathetic, and passive. And when the 8, when they're moving towards that average to unhealthy side of the 5, they're going to withdraw, become isolated, detach from their emotions, start to lose trust in people, and maybe even become a little cynical. So looking at those stressors, those are both very different things. And so look at those stressors if you're trying to decide between the two. And the last thing I would ask yourself if you're trying to decide between these two is, how do you deal with failure? 8s do not fear failure. It's not like they like it, but they don't fear it. 3s, one of their core fears is the fear of failure, and it's because if they fail, they feel like they would look bad. It's an image thing, it's a personal thing, they take it more personal, and so to them, they have a big fear of failure, and the 8s not so much. Hopefully that helps you if you're trying to decide between the two, but let's keep moving and move on to the type 8 versus the type 4, the romantic individualist. I would say these two are not commonly mistyped, but they have things in common. Both want authenticity and truth, and both don't trust easily. They're both in different triads, and so I would look at the triads if you are trying to decide between the two. The 8s are in that gut triad, which can look like, they might seem like, you know, they don't even have emotions. You're not seeing any emotions from them. And if emotions are needed, they're gonna be like, no, I just need to get up, dust myself off, toughen up, and keep going. And that would be their belief. And the type 4s, they're in the feeling triad. So many emotions. They are their feelings, right? And so they're in that feelings triad, and you're gonna experience and see way more emotions when you're around a type 4. They are gonna express those emotions. And then also they can be vulnerable with others, which is way harder for the 8 to do, because them choosing to be vulnerable leads to them feeling more valued and seen. And so that actually is a difference between the two. If an 8's vulnerable, that means they're with extremely trusted people. I mean, it's rare for them to be vulnerable, but they can do it, and they will do it, especially if they're a healthy 8. But it's with a very select few. And those 4s, they strive to be different, and they're gonna more than likely make most of their decisions from their heart. And that's a difference between them and the 8. I would say another similarity is they're both extremely intense. They're emotionally reactive and intense, and so they do share that in common, especially under stress. You're gonna see that in both types. So, all right, so that's all I have on the type 8 versus the type 4. Let's move on to the type 8 versus the type 5, the observer. Okay, so these two, it's not a common mistype. It can happen, especially because they do share that line. but they are pretty different types. There can be some occasional confusion, but 8s are usually way more assertive and forward moving. But I would say probably the confusion happens if you have an introverted 8. That does happen. They will observe before they assert themselves. They can tend to be a little bit more quiet, but they will assert themselves. That definitely can make them look like a 5 at times. The self-preservation 8 actually tends to be quieter, and so they can look like a 5 too, because that 5 can be very quiet. Unless you're a social 5. So again, those subtypes can play a big role in all of this. I would say a 5 that's angry can look like an 8. They can mistype as an 8 when they get really angry. It doesn't happen that often, but it definitely does happen. And they have that line in common, which is like an arrow or growth and stress path or whatever you want to call it. The 5 goes towards the 8 in health, and so they're using the healthy, they're using that healthy side of the 8, which is they're more assertive, loyal, brave, and determined. They're going to take some of that healthy, those healthy qualities from the 8 when they're doing good. But then the 8 moves towards the 5 under stress, and they take on more of the average unhealthy parts of the 5, which means when they're under stress, they're going to withdraw and to plan and research. They want to probably research what's stressing them out and try to figure it out. Or they might actually withdraw and just to research something, but it might not even be to do with what's going on. It might, I know I'll use my husband as an example. When he's under stress, I've said this in other videos before, but he tends to all of a sudden want to research how to build a house or how to rip out the bathroom and redo it. And none of that's bad, but it's just like, usually for me, it's a red flag of like, okay, what's going on in your life that you're putting all your energy just into research and planning something. And usually that'll lead to a good discussion, and we'll talk about maybe what's stressing him out. And that's the purpose of these arrows, to give you some clues, kind of like that rumble strip of like, okay, something is off, what's going on and what's wrong. I would say if you're trying to decide between the two, look at the head or the body. The 5 is in that head triad, the 8 is in the body triad, which is the gut triad. Which one do you trust more if you're a 5 or an 8? Do you trust your gut? Or do you trust your head? 8s, they trust their gut about almost everything. They're gonna trust their gut in all their decision making, how they perceive others, how they analyze and solve problems. They're trusting their gut. The 5, they're in their head. They're thinking about it. They're analyzing it. They're gonna trust their minds and their logic first. And so that could help you decide between the two if you are trying to decide between the two. Okay, so let's move on to the type 8 versus the type 6, the loyalist. Okay, so this one is the trickiest one out of all of them because while the 8 and the 6, just the general 8s and 6s are very different. But where the problem lies is there's something called a phobic 6 and a counterphobic 6, and the counterphobic 6 actually does look like the 8. That counterphobic 6 can be mistyped as an 8. Both the 8 and the counterphobic 6, they can both be outspoken, aggressive, want to handle their problems assertively. They both can appear to be, super tough and ready for anything, and both actually can have a little bit of rebelliousness to them. So those are the things that the counterphobic 6 and the 8 do have in common, but here's the big difference between those two. The 8, they're very confident and decisive. They don't struggle with that anxiety that the counterphobic 6 still struggles with. They still are a 6. Their cores are still the same as the 6. They still struggle with lots of self-doubt and anxiety. It just looks different than the phobic 6, if that makes sense. And so that's a little bit of a difference between the counterphobic 6 and the 8. And I want to talk about the phobic 6 and the 8 too. There are way more differences between those two. The phobic 6, they are cautious, compliant, they're more tense, they're more skeptical. They are looking for an authority figure to protect them. And the 8, they are that authority figure, right? They're the ones that want to be the authority figure and help protect others. They will stand up for themselves and others. And so that's a big difference between the phobic 6 and the 8. One thing they have in common is they both are loyal. They definitely have that in common. So anyways, I hope some of that helps you decide between the phobic, counterphobic, the phobic 6, the counterphobic 6, and the 8. I know it gets so confusing, guys. That's why I'm doing this series. But I do hope this at least gave you a little more info to help you land on your actual type. But let's move on to the type 8 versus the type 7. Okay, so the type 8 and the type 7, they definitely can be mistyped for each other. They share wings in common, the 8 wing 7, the 7 wing 8. The 8 wing 7, they're called the Maverick. This one has tons of energy, they're blunt, quick, assertive. And then the 7 wing 8 is called the Realist. They're more of like a workaholic, they're confident, they're ambitious. Those are little differences between the two. If you are an 8 and you're watching this and you're like, wait, I don't know my wing, I will link the wings videos down below, maybe right here too. I'm not sure what side that is on, but I will link the wings video. I've already done the whole entire video. Actually, I've done the wings series totally start to finish. And so, but I will link that 8 wings video down below for you guys if you want to know your wing. I would say the 8 and the 7, they're both assertive. Why? They're both in that aggressive stance. They both go after what they want. I would say big difference between the two is look at, if you're trying to decide between the two, the advice I would have is look at the triads. The 8 is in the gut triad. I've already covered that a ton. And the 7 is in the thinking triad. And so I was just covering that on the type 5 too. It's that head. You know, they use the head before the gut, before the heart, and the 8 uses their gut before their head and before their heart. Doesn't mean they can't use them all. They're all instincts, but their first instinct as the 8 is the gut instinct. You know, they're going to engage in life in their life circumstances and stuff like that through their gut. And then the 7, they're going to use their quick and avid minds first. And so that's a little difference between the two. I would say another big difference is 8s, they're more realistic. The 7s are more optimistic. The 8s, they're strongly rooted. They live in the real world. At least that's what they would say. They live in the real world. They live in that present. They deal with real issues. They really think they're a realist. And then the 7s, the optimist in them, it gives them permission to always reframe, think positively, think the best is gonna happen. And I don't know, they like always have a smile for everyone and everything like that. And so that's a big difference between the two. Okay, so the last one, the type 8 versus the type 9, the peacemaker. I would say these are definitely not common. More than likely not a mistyping. They're very different, but they actually have a lot in common. They're both in the gut triad and they both share wings. But let's start with the gut triad and them both being in it and what that looks like. You know, so they have that first instinct of, you know, experiencing the world through their gut. But what they both deal with in this is anger, but how they both deal with it looks different. But the 9, they fall asleep to it and don't express it until I don't know, it's a volcano. It's just they're constantly pushing down their anger and then eventually it blows. But the 8s, most 8s, not all of them, they'll just express their anger whenever they need to. They're not trying to push it down. They're not trying to hide it. They're not trying to pretend it's not there. They're not falling asleep to it. They have anger, they'll express it and they'll move on. So that makes those two very different. And the 9s, they don't even know they're angry half the time. They have lost touch with that. And so I know for myself, I have to do a lot of inner work and soul searching and trying to, you know, deal with the feeling of anger and making sure that I know it's okay to express it and give myself permission and so that it doesn't build up and blow later on. But that's very different than the type 8. So anyways, the other thing I would look at is the wings. Like I said, the 8 wing 9, they're called the bear. My husband is an 8 with a 9 wing. This one is steady and patient and less aggressive. And so I do have a lot of 8s come to me and go, well, I'm not as aggressive as everyone says the 8 is. And I would say, oh, you probably have a 9 wing then because they're not as aggressive. They're steady, they're quieter, they're patient, they're called the bear. And then the 9 wing 8, which is me, so my husband and I both have wings in common, they're called the comfort seeker. They're social, engaging, can be independent, and they can be assertive. And so I know I use my 8 wing way more than my 1 wing. I have learned, and probably by being married to an 8 too, that it's okay to be assertive, it's okay, but I still have the deepest fear of conflict, so don't get me wrong, at the core I'm a 9, but I have utilized some of the healthiness of the 8 and decided to show up and be assertive and go after, you know, my own dreams and desires in life. So anyways, that is it, guys. That is the whole series. It's done. We're done. I'm so excited to be done. So if you just got here and this is the first video you're watching in this series and you're like, wait, there's a whole series. Yes, I actually started at the 9. That's why the 8 is the last one, because I wasn't going to do this as a series. I was just like, oh, you know, I'm a 9. I'm going to do the mistypes of a 9. And so I did it. And then I had so many requests for everybody else's types that I was like, okay, this definitely needs to be a series. And so I have done types 9 all the way up to 8 now. So, okay, let's just say that a lot simpler. I've done types 1 through 9. They're all done. Go find those. They're all under a playlist of mistypes. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. I've appreciated you allowing me in your life, in your home, on your phone, to teach you. You guys know it's my passion. I want to teach you about this. I want to help you to understand yourself, to accept yourself, to love yourself, and then love others out of that same space. Accept others out of that same space. Give others to be the freedom of who they are and I think that's the healthiest way we can live. So that's why I do this, that's why I teach this, that's why I've chosen YouTube as a platform to give a lot of this away for free. But if you do find yourself at the end of this still super confused, I do have a Discover You typing session that I offer. I will link that down below. Go check that out if you want a whole hour with me where I can help you find your type. I will say I do most of those over Zoom, especially nowadays, or FaceTime or Skype or whatever you guys choose. So I do offer that. I also have a marriage typing session. That's a super fun one. That's an hour-and-a-half session with me, and we will figure out both your guys' types. So I have a ton of other stuff. Go look at my website if you want to know more of what I offer. But the last thing I will say, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm Hillary_McCaskey_coaching. That's my personal Instagram account. And then I also have a business Instagram account, which is Enneagram and Coaching, which that one is just Enneagram stuff. My personal is a mix of me and the Enneagram. So go follow me in those two places if you want to find me on social media. I'm trying to think, is that it? Is that all I have for you guys today? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. And I enjoy just spending time with you. And then also, if you follow me on social media, I think this new thing I want to do is, if you follow me on my personal one, say hi in my DMs. Say hi and just say, hey, I found you on YouTube. But because of nowadays, there's so many like follow for follows and stuff like that, I don't usually follow many people that follow me because I don't know if it's a real follow. But if this is a real follow, let me know in the DM. So, all right, that's it. This video is way too long. That's all I have for today. Until next time, bye guys.